Hi guys, welcome back to my channel. It is now 2021, which is kind of crazy to believe that we're somehow here. Because it's now 2021, I need to wrap up my December reads. I read 12 books in December, which is a really good amount for me. I kind of usually aim for 2 books a week, so this is perfect, and I thought I'd just talk about it here. The day that I'm filming this is actually the 31st of December, so I have 1 day left, but I'm gonna finish my current read today, and I already know my thoughts on it, so thought I'd film this now while I have time. So the first book I read this month was First Day of My Life by Lisa Williamson. This is a UK YA novel that's coming out in January. I think this comes out on January 7th, so almost as soon as this video goes live, the book will be out. This is about a girl whose best friend goes missing, and on the same day a baby is stolen, and she just assumes that her best friend has stolen this baby. And it follows 3 different people: the main girl, the best friend, and then this guy who is the main girl's ex. I did enjoy this. I thought the concept was really interesting around like the stolen baby. I do think it was very predictable. Like, I could guess straight away how this was gonna go. I didn't know going into it that was gonna be 3 points of view. I thought it was just the best friend, because the blurb is just from the best friend's point of view, and it also is like a trend apparently in UK YA at the moment where like the best friend goes missing and you never see the best friend. But in this it's like equally split between the 3, which makes me happy. Yeah, so I found it really predictable, and I didn't really enjoy that aspect of it. I wasn't a huge fan of Frankie's point of view because I found her to be quite selfish, and I know that she is 16, and some elements I was like, okay, this is just me with my 21-year-old brain being annoyed. But at some points I was just like, you're being a bit dumb here, like this is not right. I did really like Jojo as a character, who is the best friend. I thought she was a really interesting person to follow. Ram was kind of interesting, but again, Jojo was the most interesting out of the lot. She had the most interesting plot. I really enjoyed that aspect of it. Overall, I gave this 3 out of 5 stars because I liked it, but I didn't love it. Then I read Someday at Christmas by Lizzie Byron, which is a Christmas rom-com set in Brighton about a fat makeup artist who works in a department store that is failing, and the grandson of the owner is trying to save it, and they fall in love. I really love this story. I think this story was really festive and cute and just adorable all around. It was so much fun to read, especially because we don't get a lot of like UK set Christmas stories that aren't in London. So this was a really unique setting for me. I really love the main characters. I love how it talks about race. It also talks about body positivity. There's a lot of discussion around makeup. I feel like there's a lot of makeup tips in here that I need to learn. Overall, this is just such a fun story. So if you're looking for a festive story for next year, I would highly suggest you pick this up. It's really great. Next I read another arc, and that is Concrete Rose by Angie Thomas. This comes out January 12th, so it'll be out soon after this video goes up. This is a prequel to The Hate You Give. It follows Star's father in the early to late 90s when his first child is born, and it's so amazing. Angie Thomas is such a brilliant writer. I don't know how she writes these characters that just feel so realistic. I personally have never really met anybody who is anything like Maverick, but he just felt so real and so realistic, and I think he was beautifully written. Also, a YA book from a protagonist of a man, a YA contemporary book from a protagonist of a man that isn't like a gay. If I do read a book that has a male protagonist, it's usually about a gay relationship. So this was really refreshing to read because of that. Now that I think more of it, the only male protagonists I've read in YA are either gay or black, which is very interesting because we seem to have a lot of black boy protagonists, which is great because we need that. And this was such a well done. It reminded me a lot of Boys Don't Cry by Mallory Blackman, which was one of my favourite books growing up, with the whole aspect of a kid and not being prepared for that kid and having to look after that kid as just a guy. And it was just, I loved it so much. It's such an impactful read. It's probably my least favourite of her 3 books, but it's still very impactful and beautifully written, and Angie Thomas needs to write more because I love her writing. I haven't told you any of my ratings, I've just realised. I gave First Day of My Life 3 out of 5 stars, I gave Someday at Christmas 4 out of 5 stars, and I gave this 4 out of 5 stars, probably 4.5. Then after that I read The Prince and the Troll by Rainbow Rowell, which is like a Kindle Unlimited free story. They've got like a little mini short story series that's like fairy tales. I don't like fairy tales, so unsurprisingly I did not enjoy this book. I read it just because it's Rainbow Rowell, but I came away from it just very confused and I didn't understand it. I think I'm just too dumb to get it. And I get it, but like I don't get it, if you get what I mean. I didn't really understand the world this was set in. Starbucks plays quite a big part of this story and I didn't really get it, and it was just pretty meh. It was slightly too whimsical for me and it was pretty boring, so I gave it 2.5 out of 5 stars. The next book I read was How to Fail at Flirting by Denise Williams. This was my December Words and Kisses subscription pick. and I enjoyed it. It's just about this girl who's always kind of lived this like loner life and is trying to branch out more, goes out drinking to a bar, meets this guy, starts a romance with this guy. And I thought it was fun, like it was interesting to read, but there was nothing quite unique about it. I did enjoy the discussions around domestic abuse that this brought up. It felt quite similar to the flat sharing, that vibe, but overall I just found this quite meh. It's a cute romance, but there was nothing particularly cute about it. There was nothing particularly interesting or unique about it, and I won't remember this in a month. You'll ask me the main characters' names and I won't remember, so... The next 3 books I read were all part of a trilogy that I reread, and that is Delirium. I am uploading a whole video talking about my experience rereading this, so I'm not going to go into a lot of detail, but this was a really interesting reread. It took me all the way back to 2013 YA. I really loved rereading this and being back in that world. It made me realise that pacing at the time was just a lot faster than it is now. We are used to slower paced stories now. Like honestly, character development in these books is non-existent. There's just everything's happening so quickly. I still think this world is incredibly unique. I think the concept is really interesting. However, there are a lot of elements that really irritate me about it. I will talk about that in my video just about this. I think I gave the first 2 4 out of 5 stars and the last one 3. But I just feel like when I reread a book I can't take it down a lot because it still means a lot to me because of what it meant to me at the time, if that makes sense. So the next book I read was Love and Other Words by Christina Lauren. So this was the only standalone adult romance by them that I hadn't read. So I decided to finally read it. I really love this story. It's one of my new favourites by them. This follows 2 characters who were childhood best friends and childhood sweethearts when they were teenagers, and then circumstance happened that they stopped talking and then they run into each other years later. And you're kind of following both timelines at once, so them as teenagers slowly falling in love with each other, and them as adults kind of refiguring out where they are in life and if they can fit back into each other's lives. I loved this story. I wasn't entirely convinced by the dual timelines to begin with because I genuinely just hate that. I don't like it, but I really loved this one. I think the romance was really unique and the way it's slowly built up in the original timeline is just beautiful to me. I particularly love the main guy, Elliot. I think he's very unique for a male protagonist, love interest. I do think the ending was kind of a bit rushed of them dealing with the conflict of what happened originally and them kind of dealing with how it affects them now. But overall I just think it's a really great standalone romance novel from them. I ended up giving that book 4 out of 5 stars and I really want to own a physical copy because I really enjoyed it. The next book I read was The Lucky Escape by Laura J. Williams, which is an e-arc I had. I was tempted to put this off because it's very summery vibe, but it was the only book I had at the time that I wanted to read. This is about a girl who gets left at the altar by the man she's meant to marry, and then she's told to go on her honeymoon anyway, which is like 3 weeks in Australia, and she runs into a childhood best friend and invites him to go with her. I somewhat enjoyed this book. I quite enjoyed the premise. I quite enjoyed the aspects that were in Australia. However, I found the main character to be really horrible, to the main guy in particular. Like, he wasn't doing anything wrong and she was just always angry at him for no reason, particularly once they came back from Australia. Like, the massive argument that happened was a bit ridiculous. Laura Jane Williams kind of always perpetrates this idea that to be a feminist and to follow your own heart, you have to be horrible to the men, because it's happened in all of her books where they're like, no, I want to do what I want to do, and they're horrible to the men, when the men have done nothing to deserve that because they haven't stopped them. There are also a few lines in here that made me feel a bit iffy. There was a line particularly where they're describing the main character's best friend. The way that they choose to tell us that she is black is by saying her black cheekbones, which I just found very weird, and that was within like 2 pages and I was just very confused. But overall, it was okay, but it wasn't anything different, so I gave it 2.5 out of 5 stars. Next book I read you might laugh at, and that is Who We Are by One Direction, which is their autobiography. So I listened to this via audiobook. It's a very quick audiobook. Each chapter is about 20 minutes and there's 1 chapter per guy. And I just listened to it at the gym because I'm obsessed with One Direction at the moment, so I thought why not use one of my Audible credits to listen to One Direction talk about their life. This was a weird audiobook because it's kind of designed for you to see the pictures that are in the book, because it is mainly just pictures, and it's not very definitive. Like, if you don't know anything about One Direction you wouldn't listen to this because it doesn't tell you anything new. It doesn't explain their journey. It's not really an autobiography. It's just like, oh, this is how I felt during this situation and this situation. It's a very strange book, to be fair, but I think it's because everyone kind of knows their journeys at this point. So when they released this, I think it was like their third book as well, so they were like, we're not going to repeat the exact same things we've already said like 10 times. It was still fun. I love listening to it. I love One Direction. However, it did annoy me that Harry's chapter was double the length of everyone else's, because I hate that. Like, the order of how much the management likes them is the order of how long their chapters were. Like, Harry had the longest, then Zayn, then Liam, then Louis, and then Niall. And it was very clear, like, the favoritism there. Also, I will say the narration is good, but in some parts it's not as great, particularly Zayn's chapter, because there's a lot of background noise. Like, there's a dog barking in the background and you can tell the quality isn't as good, and he kind of struggles to narrate, I think, a little bit more, but it's fine, because if you like One Direction, it's still Zayn speaking about like his life to you, so it's perfectly fine. I ended up giving this 4 out of 5 stars because I love One Direction, like, who doesn't? And the final book is the one that I'm currently reading. I'm almost finished, so I thought I'd just throw it in here anyway, and I'm going to finish it by the end of the day. That book is The Duke and I by Julia Quinn. So along with everybody, on Christmas Day I started watching Bridgerton and I really enjoyed it. There were elements that I didn't like, some very problematic elements to it. However, I was more interested in the rest of the side characters than the main two, so I decided to start reading the series. I started with book 1 just because I feel like I have to. My opinions aren't very different to the TV show opinions, like, it's still pretty fun but problematic in a lot of places. I'm excited to carry on with the rest of the series. Today I will finish The Duke and I and go straight into the rest of the series, so in my January wrap up you will hopefully see my opinion on the rest of the series, because I'm hoping to read all of them quite quickly. This is the first historical romance I've ever read. I don't really read historical books, and that's why I never read them to begin with, because I just assumed I wouldn't like it. But I like the TV show and I'm more interested in the side characters. Like, I want Colin and Penelope's story. That's why I'm going to read the books, because why not? Those are all the books I read in December. Let me know what your favourite book is that you read in December, if you read any great books. Mine will probably be either Concrete Rose or Love and Other Words, for different reasons. I hope you enjoyed this video and I will see you in my next one.